there might be this one dude you
Some.
might know. Some, yes, you might be this one good dude you know called Joe Rogan. There's been massive fallout from Spotify controversy this week. We touched on it a bit last week, and it's only just gotten worse this week.
So
So
just
there's
for the audience last week, basically Neil Young and a
yep,
couple of
yep.
other artists, like it's up on was one other artist. Um, at this
There's
point,
several.
at this point, not to be super like mean about it, but like not a lot of like major artists have done this yet. Neil Young was kind of like the bigger name, but even then he's sort of like an older name. No one more recent has done any of these yet, but still there are artists who are threatening to pull their catalogs off of Spotify or doing it entirely because of a lot of behavior that has happened on the podcast. Not just like, oh, they're informal or they smoke weed or
Yeah.
drink whatever. Like, no one really cares about that, honestly. It's the misinformation about COVID-19. It's the like denialism of what like regular people are saying about this. It's the false balance that he tries to have on his program, where he says that he's inviting people of all sides of the political spectrum and they're all overwhelmingly right wing. And yeah, people have just been kind of tired of it. And last week, Spotify seemed like, listen, we are going to try to take some policies and say, listen, we're going to, Joe Rogan's podcast is staying, obviously, but we're going to make sure that COVID misinformation on our platform and the podcast side is as little as possible. We'll put disclaimers in front of things, basically the cover your ass stuff that social media platforms have been doing since 2020. But then this week, it goes into even more stuff because the attention of Joe Rogan sort of gratuitously using the N-word on his podcast on however many thousands of episodes there have been at this point. There's like a super cut of those. And that caused another artist, notably India Arai, who Ari, I think, like, who pulled all of her music from Spotify over Joe Rogan's gratuitous use of the N-word. And it's sort of like, there's different contexts of this. I've talked about how some shows will sometimes quote the N-word even if the presenters of that show are not black, because they want to quote like racism that's actually happening and they don't want to sugarcoat that. And you can agree or disagree with that sort of way of going about things. But that's different than Joe Rogan talking about like going to being the only white person in an all black movie theater and it feeling like Planet of the Apes around like talking about the N-word and stuff like that. There's wildly different contexts to these things. And so it is, really blowing up in their face. So now Spotify has removed at least 70 episodes of the Joe Rogan Experience.
Insane.
Some of these include instances of the N-word being used during the podcast. Other of these, as Sean and I were remarking just before the podcast began, are actually some of the rare times where Joe Rogan does invite people from the left of the political spectrum as opposed to overwhelmingly right-wing people on the political spectrum. And I listened to Joe Rogan years and years ago at a time when it was mostly comedians. And every once in a while you'd get Ben Shapiro, but almost more often you'd get Kyle Kalinske or some left-wing YouTuber,
Martin.
Abby Martin, yes. All like equally reputable people or, like differently reputable people, but, like across the whole spectrum. Joe Rogan was a little bit better at doing that in the past, but has since completely thrown away that and has started to act like, oh no, responsibility, me having that, sorry. So it has been really rocky for him. Yeah, more artists are supposedly joining the Spotify boycott. And so I'm just going through a couple. So there's Joni Mitchell and Neil Young, which we talked about earlier. India Arai, who was upset over the N-word usage.
Of Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Another one where they also had Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. So compatriots of Neil Young as well.
Yeah.
Quite a few. And a lot of them are citing either, obviously, the COVID misinformation stuff, racial things in the past as well. There's plenty of things that they are complaining about, and pretty valid reasons, especially the COVID stuff. And it's not looking good. Definitely, like, it's hurting Spotify because a lot of people are unsubscribing from Spotify for many reasons. You know, you have people who are doing it in like protest of Joe Rogan or and other ways. People now actually finding out kind of how bad Spotify treats artists and other things. Because I've actually seen people that coming to the eye of people now because they're of from this controversy, they're now understanding that Spotify sucks in general, even though it's the only damn app that works on my phone. So I still have to stuck getting used having to use it until they pull Radiohead's until Radiohead pulls the discography. Then I'm fucked for life. And then I'm just gonna listen to vinyl. Damn it.
He's gonna carry around vinyl like literally portably with him on his
Literally
bike, just
everywhere.
on the back. But
I'm a fly with the record player on the left wing.
there's one study that was showing that maybe 19% of Spotify's users have unsubscribed or plan to unsubscribe following the Joe Rogan backlash. And I'm not sure exactly how this study was taken, but it was done by a Forrester Research. Like, it was a consumer research poll. Usually they poll only like 1,000 people. They don't actually have Spotify's numbers because they're not going to tell you. But here's what I'll say is just like a seasoned media person, and also just like kind of, just my perspective of just doing that. Like, I'll just say that now, because not only have I been doing Audioface for 5 years, but there's all the other shows and things I've been adjacent and around to that I feel like I can speak well on this. Usually, I mean, to be real, Americans are pathetic and lazy when it comes to standing up for anything in these kinds of boycotts. So if they're going to be mad about Joe Rogan for, a day, a week, or whatever, usually these things kind of blow over, because at the end of the day, America is moving on this like anti quote unquote cancel culture energy, whatever it is, whatever it isn't. And so as a result, you get Joe Rogan and his fan base, they're not going to really care about any kind of reaction that's had.
So the contrary to that is people are canceling their Spotify in protest of the protest of saying, I'm not going to go to Spotify because they are part of cancel culture. There's a lot of people who are doing that as well. Because the thing with JRE is he has like everything up on his own website or other things, so he's not going to have an issue. But this is going to blow up in Spotify's face for multiple reasons, which I'm not. I'm okay with, because fuck Spotify and Daniel Ek at the end of the day. Noted Time nominee Daniel Ek of the Note a Little Bitch Award. One day we'll win it, I'm sure.
And we've talked about reasons to be mad about Spotify and Daniel Ek specifically when it comes to enabling
Artist
defense
pay.
contractors for for war profiteering, or just straight out not paying artists, and finding every way they can to exploit that system, it seems, based on like what artists have been saying about the streaming game.
Yeah.
And there's just so much wrong with Spotify. But that being said, like Audioface, Power Report, we post things on Spotify. We'll have to continue to, because that's just like one of the biggest podcasting platforms currently, and that's how people access the show. I prefer that people access Audioface and Power Report using like literally any other podcast app, but it's just easy to share on Instagram, for example. So I do it that way, and it helps grow the show. And so ultimately we can grow some independence away from these platforms, because they all suck. And that's why Syndicate 23 is important. So you can join at content.syndicate23.co and help support us that way. So again, we can be independent from these kinds of platforms and their fuckery, more or less. But I've seen so many of these boycotts happen. Spotify is too big at this point that it would have to be something a lot more major than this to get people to get out of the habits of, all their playlists are on Spotify. All the data that they like about music is on Spotify. It's going to get hard. It's going to be hard for people to shift. And like harder than it is for the same way like Facebook, where like people hate Facebook because of like how profound it is and how much data it has, and people really don't like that. But ultimately, it's just a music interface. Spotify is, more or less, and podcasting. So I think we'll revisit this. Like, people said I was really harsh when I said that everyone who was marching around the streets in Black Lives Matter protests in 2020 is going to forget about this in 3 months. And I was right. But we will see what happens within this case. We'll check in 3 months from now. If people really, really care that much about Joe Rogan and all this ever doing, and we'll have another quarterly report from Spotify by then. We'll be able to see what the numbers look like and if they've lost to Apple Music or whatever. But tweet at me, Dan from the Web, if you actually disagree with me. But whatever, I don't care. I'm right.
Fair play.